Franklin Delano Roosevelt was born in Hyde Park, New York in 1882. He attended Harvard University for undergraduate school and then went on to law school at Columbia. Following in the footsteps of his fifth cousin, Theodore Roosevelt, whom he admired very much, Roosevelt started to be involved in politics as a Democrat. He first became a New York senator and then was appointed Assistant Secretary of the Navy under President Woodrow Wilson. In 1921, Roosevelt contracted polio, causing him to lose the use of his legs. This was important because it left him in a wheelchair, which was an aspect that was hidden from the public much of the time. FDR was elected president in 1932 in the midst of the Great Depression. Thus, he spent much of his presidency working on the New Deal, a series of domestic programs to revitalize the economy and increase employment levels.
The Franklin Delano Roosevelt Memorial was created by Lawrence Halpern in 1974 to honor the 32nd president for his courageous efforts during the Great Depression and throughout World War II. The monument is located south of the mall along the western bank of the Tidal Basin. The memorial sits halfway between the Lincoln Memorial and the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. It consists of 4 outdoor rooms, representing FDR's 4 terms. Pathways lead to waterfalls, bronze sculptures, and 21 quotes engraved on granite walls scattered throughout different rooms. An additional entry room called the Prologue depicts Roosevelt in a wheelchair. At the age of 39, Roosevelt was diagnosed with polio and wasn't able to walk unaided. To honor his disability, Lawrence Halpern and his team made the monument accessible to any and all people of any ability level. Halpern added wheelchair ramps before the American Disabilities Act required them. He also included Braille in the memorial of the New Deal, which encouraged people to touch the statues. Working on the Roosevelt Project for more than a decade, Neil Estern sculptured the 8'11" statue of Roosevelt located in the third room, which portrays him sitting in a chair with small casters, along with the president's beloved terrier, Fala, who sits beside him. Estern also sculpted Eleanor Roosevelt, Franklin's wife and First Lady of the United States. FDR's memorial marks the first time a First Lady was honored in a presidential memorial.
Visual elements. This memorial consists of countless visual elements that are immediately apparent. For instance, there is an abundance of water and waterfalls specifically throughout the memorial. Water plays an important role in this memorial as it reflects how during different times of his presidency, there was chaos with the very strong water and relative calmness with the softer water. However, there was more stronger water as it was a relatively chaotic presidency. Another visual element is the sheer amount of statues. The obvious statues to include are those of FDR, but this memorial is unique in that there are multiple of him, one showing his wheelchair and one covering it. This is to illustrate how his disability was a fundamental aspect of his life, but something that he attempted to not let affect his political career. In addition, there is a statue of his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, and this is similarly unique as this memorial is the only one with a statue of the First Lady. But the fact that she is not next to FDR and rather has her own section represents the fact that they had a very strained relationship. Finally, there are statues of ordinary people in line for food due to the economic turmoil faced by the Great Depression, which represents one of the greatest aspects that dominated his presidency. This memorial also has a lot of written text. These are the most famous of his quotations and come from all throughout his presidency. One of these is a plaque which reads, "Freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear." This comes from his speech as America entered World War II, where he outlined his quote-unquote 4 freedoms, and he hoped to illustrate the pressing need for the U.S. to get involved. These 4 freedoms would continue to be an essential point of FDR's goal in the war. Another famous quote incorporated by FDR in this memorial is, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." This quote is immortalized as the example of how bravely he led the country and brought it through tumultuous times. Viewer experience. The way this monument is laid out is very intentional, as this memorial is divided up into 4 rooms which are designed to represent his 4 terms in office in chronological order. This makes it so that the viewer goes through his presidency in a way that is cohesive and enables an understanding of how his terms went. In addition, the unique structure of this memorial enables it to seem much more humble than the grand memorial of other presidents, something most likely done to illustrate to the viewer how FDR was helpful for the common person. In addition, the memorial is specific in its striking beauty, something that makes the viewer very happy as they consume the educational content. And the viewer leaves this memorial with an understanding of the history of FDR and his wife and exactly what he did, something unfound at other presidential memorials.
This memorial itself is not a metaphor, as it is fairly literal. However, there are a few symbolic aspects. First, the memorial is completely surrounded by trees, including some within the memorial. It is also situated on the tidal basin. This is symbolic of FDR's aim to bring the country back to life during the Great Depression because nature is a common symbol of life. Also, in the section of the memorial representing FDR's third term, the phrase, "I hate war," is repeated 3 times in various locations. Accompanying these phrases are stacked cube-shaped rocks, which are falling down. This is symbolic of FDR's vision of the country if it were to join in World War II. The country would fall apart like the rocks.
So what's your name?
Rose Fowler.
Okay, nice to meet you. I'm Alex.
Hi, Alex.
So our first question is, do you have a personal connection with the memorial?
Well, I've always thought Eleanor Roosevelt was a very important person in our national history and the work she did in the country. But I personally don't know anyone that was in World War II or anything like that in which he, FDR managed that war for us and helped us win that war. So I guess the question is, for me, what do you mean by personal exactly?
I think your answer is good, just that there's
Okay.
a connection there. What would you say was your first impression when you saw this memorial first?
Well, the first thing I saw was a group of people gathered around those statements about fear, no more fear and no more hunger, and I thought how powerful that was. I think this memorial it grabs your attention because it has so many levels, and it's my question is, what's going on with it? Why would it be on multiple levels? Why would it be angular? So it's intriguing, and I want to explore it.
Thank you. And what do you think you will remember most about this memorial?
Good question. The dark stone, the openness of it, the angular walkways, different levels, and how simple and powerful the wording is.
All right. And our last question is, what feeling are you left with after seeing it?
Well, I'm glad to see Eleanor front and center. So I feel like it honors, it does what it intends to do. It honors these people that did such great work for our country.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
There are examples of ethos, logos, and pathos scattered throughout the Roosevelt Memorial. When you enter the first room of the monument known as his first term, it begins with the presidential seal. This large stone carving serves as a reminder of who the monument is dedicated to, while also evoking a sense of ethos, as the seal represents his authority, power, and his 4th-term presidency. The first room also includes quotes which focus on his initial goals during his election. During the Great Depression, a third of the Americans were not working. To counter this, FDR promised to revive the economy by incorporating economical programs known as the New Deal. This is shown in the quote, "I pledge you, I pledge myself, to a new deal for the American people." This quote shows pathos as he is incorporating the audience as well as himself, showing that together they will overcome the Great Depression. Following this, we enter the next room, which subsequently represents FDR's 2nd term. We are shown depictions of life during the Great Depression, giving the audience a feel on how the New Deal impacted American citizens. Behind this is a wall with sculptures of FDR's 54 New Deals. Also engraved on this wall are depictions of workers' hands. This shows logos as Roosevelt's inclusion of the New Deal allowed for workers to have stable wages and vast public work programs for the unemployed. The final room, known as the 4th term, portrays Franklin Roosevelt's passing, with calm, motionless waters indicating his death. This offers the audience a sense of pathos because the burial relief sets the tone for the end of the monument by depicting the nation in mourning following the death of their president.